Welcome back to another episode of Empowered by Victress. This is your host, Stacy Orsborn, and today I am so excited to sit down with one of my favorite humans in this world, honestly. Jenna Riddle is a member of Victress Lincoln, has been for, gosh, Jenna, how long has it been?
Shortly after it opened.
Yeah, I was going to say, so since like 2019.
Mm.
And she is, I just feel like the epitome of a complete, can I say badass on here? I think I can say that. I don't know. We'll see. I'll put the explicit on if I need to today. But the way that what she's doing for work now, what she's done for work in the past, is just absolutely incredible, especially as a woman, and a mom, and so many other roles and hats that you wear. So I am just super excited to pick your brain because I really haven't been able to talk to you much about your new endeavor and everything and how all
Mm.
of this is going. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jenna, let's tell the world what it is you do now. Actually, no, let's back up. Let's say that. Jenna is a self-defense specialist right now. Is that what you were calling is that what we call you now?
Yeah, teaching self-defense classes. Yeah.
Yeah. Specifically for women, correct?
Yes, specifically for women, and then focusing on teen girls as well.
Okay. Yes. So, and we're talking physical, but also like situational self-defense, right?
Yeah.
Like not just like the action itself, but also like situational awareness and like education on like what, steps to take from preventative measures, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's where it all starts is situational awareness and being prepared, and then heaven forbid ever having to use physical means to protect yourself. So yeah.
Absolutely. Cool. So you went to Wesleyan, right? Here
Yes.
in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah.
What was your major there?
So my undergrad was a bachelor in psychology, with a minor in criminal justice. And then right after graduating, I did their forensic science program, their master's program. And they had a couple different tracks with that. I focused on behavioral, so why people commit crimes, type of people that commit crimes, things like that. So
That's like fascinating to me. I
mm,
find all of this psychological, like the psychological thrillers are probably one of my
mhm,
favorite genres of all the things out there. So,
yeah,
but also like I'm on this side of it, not actually living, breathing, seeing the real people behind all of those things. So I'm sure it's a completely different environment. And
yeah,
you played volleyball at Wesleyan,
yep.
is that
I
right?
played volleyball for a couple years. Yep,
Yeah, enjoyed that.
yep. Met some of my closest friends.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And how has, obviously like being an athlete and then also like going into that field, did you see a lot of similarities between like the empowerment of movement and the empowerment athletics in regards to also the um, you know, scope of education and, eventually career path that you ended up taking?
Oh gosh, I feel like just being involved in athletics has helped me throughout my whole life. I mean, starting from a young age, it teaches you so much stuff about discipline and pushing through. Um, as we'll talk in a few minutes, my time with the State Patrol, having to go through the academy for 6 months, and the physical aspect of that was just insane. But alongside of that, and even more, was the mental part of it. And I feel
Mm.
like going through athletics and juggling, especially in college, juggling, playing a sport and school, um, it really taught me a lot on how to handle those things. So,
Yeah, I mean the correlation between the psychological effects of a lot of hard things and then movement specific stuff seems to be an overarching thing for a lot of women, where it's like the first time that they really like face hard things in a different way, right? Like we do hard things like every single day, but when in that tangible, like movement specific way, it tends to like rear its head a little bit more. So let's chat about pre-state troopers. What, after you're getting your degree, what did you decide to do moving forward in your career after
yeah.
college?
So for a few years after college, I did. diversion services. I don't know if anybody's going to be like, oh yeah, I went through that. So
I
that
went
was for,
I went through that.
so I was one of their case managers for that. So if you got an MIP, tons of different citations, you could go through that instead of having to go through court and actually having a conviction. Anyway, so I did that for a few years. And then I took a couple years off and was staying at home. And then for 7 years, I did security clearance investigations. So anybody from people who worked at like Nelnet to high ups in the military, I would do their security clearance investigations. So interviewing them and their neighbors and coworkers and things like that. So gained a lot of experience meeting all different types of people and talking about all different types of things. Um, and then after that, I joined the patrol.
Yeah, and so what drove you to actually decide to like take the leap of joining the patrol? I know you and I have kind of talked about this in the past in regards to like the time commitment, like being away from your family,
Mm-hmm.
just like all of the things that went into like the sacrifices you had to make to go ahead and take that route. What was it that like decided like I want to pursue this career path for yourself?
Yeah, so I had always had that in the back of my mind of wanting to do something in law enforcement, specifically investigations. I love digging in and finding out why, how, um, and not. I can't give up until I find the answer. And so I thought doing the security clearance investigations, I mean, that was very flexible, easy. I was good at it. I thought that was going to be where I stayed forever because it was going to be easy for our family. And I had kind of given up on the law enforcement side of it because we started having kids and family and all that stuff. And then stuff within the company that the federal agency that I was contracted with, and then also COVID happened, and so um, the need for that position became less and less. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I just started networking with people, and somebody mentioned the state patrol to me, and I'm just like, no, no, like I listened, and then I was just like, I don't think that'll work. And then as I talked about it more, and obviously talked to people in my support network and my husband, and I just felt like if I don't do this now, I'm always going to wonder,
Hmm.
what could have been. And I feel like being at Victress, I obviously feeling empowered physically, but then just seeing all these amazing women that you're around all the time and things that they're doing and how they're, reaching for their goals or being supported by other women saying like, yes, you can do this, like, go
Hmm.
for it. That was huge. And so, yeah, I just decided to go for it.
And it was a 6 month commitment, right? Like you essentially like lived
Yes.
away from your family for 6 months.
Yep, 6 months in Grand Island, there during the week, back home on the weekends, and I have no idea how we survived that. My husband is amazing and kept everything together while I was gone, and my kids survived, and yeah, it was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. What was that experience like? Like, I mean, like a typical day, I'm sure every day was probably different, but like a typical day, like what did that look like for you?
Oh, gosh. Um, I feel like I was constantly in like fight or flight mode nonstop, especially in the beginning because it is very intense. It's paramilitary style. So you are getting yelled at, you are doing, physical, um, what's the right word to use? I mean, punishments,
Right.
essentially, like corrections. Um, but I mean, push ups, wall sits, like all that stuff, especially during the first few weeks. I mean, it was nonstop. In addition to having worked out that morning and then a lot of classroom training, but just anything and everything. I mean, if you think about it, getting all that training into 6 months, you can get a lot in there. So it was a whole week on defensive tactics. So learning how to control movements and things like that, and handcuffing and all that. And then we had firearm range week where you shot thousands of rounds. I mean, so that you became proficient at things. But then there's also
Hmm.
the classroom side of it, learning all the laws and everything that you need to know. So,
What was that like being a woman within that space? Like, I
mm,
mean, because you were probably one of very few, if not the only one. I don't
hmm
remember, but what was that like in that? Um, Not just in the training. I guess we could talk about the career path afterwards, but within that training specific, like, what was that like?
hmm So I started out as one of two women, and then by week 5, the other female had left, and so I was one female amongst like 18 guys.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I think it definitely depends on your personality, and I'm older, so I feel like I had this maturity about myself that I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like I held my own
Hmm.
space, and I felt like that was also respected amongst
Hmm.
those guys as well. Um, because they also saw that I was putting in the effort and the time and I was serious. But it was definitely also like, gosh, you guys have no idea, like what I'm going through, like how this is different for me.
Hmm.
Um, but I do okay being like in those situations where I'm the only female or the only this or that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Absolutely. Were the workouts different for you, or were any of the training stuff like different specific for you, or is it, this is the standard, this is what we want from everybody across the board?
Yep. It was the same for everybody. Um, I mean, from pull-ups, I mean, you'd have obviously you'd your intention was to do a pull-up by yourself, but everybody, especially in the beginning, you'd do what you could, and then your partner behind you would help you to finish the
Hmm.
reps. Or like when we did outside workouts, we'd have bands for pull-up. But again, like I'm not the only female, I'm not the only one using these bands, so are the guys. Like, and none of the workouts were tweaked differently or anything like that for me. So I was expected to do the same amount of push-ups, all that, which
Hmm.
I mean, coming from the athletic side of it, like women are not built the same. So,
Right,
especially
right,
upper body.
right.
Um, so it was pretty crazy, but I was focused on me and what I could do and what, doing better than I did last time, not, specifically
Yeah,
like, oh, I need to do the same as the guys or whatever. I held my
I,
own and kept
I
up.
was gonna
So
say, I feel like you probably held your own pretty well in that space, if
yeah,
I'm gonna take a guess.
yeah.
Yeah. When you graduated from trooper camp.
Academy, State Patrol
Okay,
Academy.
that's what that's called. It sounds like Cub Scouts or something along those lines. From the Nebraska State Patrol Academy, you finished really high. Like I know you got some awards at the end of that. So what were the accolades
Yeah.
you came out with?
So, yes, I was given the Leadership Award and then the Physical Fitness Award. So,
The freaking Physical Fitness Award,
yeah,
y'all.
yeah.
That's so freaking cool. I don't know why that makes me almost emotional, but it does. That
And
I remember like watching the ceremony. I don't even know, like, if I think it was in our, I think we put it in the Facebook group. I feel like it was
yeah.
like in there for everybody to watch. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm
Well,
crying.
and I was just thinking back on that. I'm like, gosh, freaking Victress women are just so amazing because literally, like, I had so many of you cheering me on for that. And even way before that, when I was preparing physically for it, just like so many people cheering me on, and definitely
Yeah,
could not have done it with all that support and knowing that I had people like rooting for me. And yeah,
yeah, it
yeah.
was freaking. So you come out of your academy and go to the streets, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like next step for you. Where were you stationed? And then what was that like primary role for you? And let's talk probably a little about your schedule because there's like a whole gamut of that in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was Troop H, which is Lincoln area was my headquarters. And then there's 14 other counties around Lincoln that we covered. So mainly I would stay around Lincoln, but could literally go wherever I wanted or if we were needed in other places. Um, Most of the time you start out at nights. It's kind of changed over the few years. And some people, newbies, have gotten day spots, but worked nights. So clocked on at 4 or 5 at night and worked till 2 or 3 in the morning, which is just insane. Like the way your body can do that and then still function. It was an adjustment, but yeah,
Yeah, I would say so a little bit. And then probably for yourself and your family, like because you
yeah,
have three kids, right?
yeah,
Well, now you have four, but we'll
4,
get there.
yeah.
You had three kids at the time, all, elementary school aged and one younger than that, right, at the time. Or was she in school by then?
She had just started kindergarten when I went to the academy.
Okay. So all
Yeah,
school age kids, all in all the activities, all in all the things.
yeah.
And so not only did you have that 6 month experience, now you're also like working this schedule.
Hmm.
But did you like it? Like, where was it fulfilling? Did you enjoy being on the streets? Like being out there and doing all the things, especially overnight, I would assume hopefully it's a little bit busier, but maybe not.
Yeah. Until you get to that about like 1, 2 a.m. and then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't stay awake. But yes, there were definitely things that I loved about it. Definitely grew me as a person, um, and just my like realizing my capabilities and um, yeah, I mean, there's things that I miss about it. Driving fast and being involved and getting to be a part of solving something or helping a situation be resolved or helping somebody who's been in an accident, things like that. Those are things that I loved about it. I loved interacting with people, which I'm an introvert, so it's weird for me to say, but like I loved getting to be um, involved in a person's situation in order to help them, whether it was to take somebody out of the situation so that others were safe or to help
Mhm.
somebody who was in a situation and hurt. Yeah.
Do you feel, well, number one, I was going to ask you about the driving thing because you mentioned that. Like, I'm sure that was like a huge part of your training too, right? Like
Yes.
learning how to drive fast and maneuver and all of those things, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes. Lots of training and there it was like a week. I mean, we did regular training, so like yearly training, and then you'd go back and you train on similar stuff. But yes, we had extensive training for driving and went to a racetrack and did some driving too. It was pretty cool.
That's so fun. That
Yeah.
would be so fun. I mean, in my brain, I think that sounds fun. Um, so then in regards to just like day-to-day life as a state trooper with the schedule you're working, obviously, like was majority of it traffic incidents and, like that type of stuff, or was it more the investigation stuff, or did you do more family, domestic cases, or like
Yeah.
what did it vary?
Yeah. So when I was on the road, so the reason that I had joined the State Patrol was to eventually get into investigations. So they have their own investigations unit. Um, and so obviously they have stipulations, so you had to be on for 2 years before you could even apply to that. And then you have to go through the interview process and all that. So I was on the road and a lot of it, at least, yeah, a lot of it is, traffic stops, whether it's, stopping somebody for speeding or you're out there looking for a reckless driver that's been reported, and then also accidents. But then again, like I said, we covered 14 counties, so we would go out and help smaller agencies who maybe didn't have the resources that we did. So whenever there was something bigger, the investigations unit came into that. So I actually got to interview for an investigative spot before my 2 years, which is pretty cool, and got that spot. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
got into investigations, and that's where I did more. We had quite a bit of domestic violence training, and I was also their domestic violence representative when I was on the road side. And then I was kind of like a backup domestic violence rep when I went over to investigations. But the training that we got on that, I think also kind of stirred my passion just for women, and their safety and
Mm-hmm.
ways that I can help in that area as well. But when I was over investigations, did anything from like fraud cases to child sexual assault cases. So a
Okay.
wide, and worked a murder suicide. So yeah, a wide
Mm-hmm.
variety of stuff.
All across the board, though.
Yeah.
And how long were you in that investigation role from that point?
So I was over there just under a year, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
because we had our surprise fourth
Mm-hmm.
baby, which just,
Yeah.
it was meant to be, and that, God had that planned all along, and but it definitely changed things for us. And so um, when I went back from maternity leave back to the investigations unit, um, I just realized like this isn't where I'm supposed to be. I
Mm-hmm.
need to be available to be home, because in investigations you work your regular shift, but then you're also on call. And so
Sure.
depending on what happens in the middle of the night or on the weekends, you could be called out for that. And so, I was nursing a 3 month old and getting a call to go work a scene. And I'm just like, this isn't where my heart is. This isn't where I'm supposed to be right now. And so I moved back to the road
Mm-hmm.
and worked nights,
Mm-hmm.
um, with a newborn. And so I can't even remember. There was so much like moving around, but I would work my shift from 4 to 2, and then come home and sleep from like 2 to 8, and then hopefully get a nap later in there before I go back to work. It was insane. So hard decision, but that's when, I really started thinking about um, long term, and if that's where I
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be. And then that's when I decided, you know, right now it, I'm supposed to be at home
Mm-hmm.
taking care of my babies. And um, yeah, that was really hard to let go of, because like we just talked about, all of that energy and empowerment and time away from my family and everything that I put into that. But when I think back on it, I'm just like, I would have so much what ifs if I hadn't done that, if I
Oh,
hadn't
yeah.
pursued that. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to get into more of that, and I'm going to give you my 2 cents on that. But I want to ask you really quick before we move on from talking about the state trooper experience specifically to being pregnant while on the force.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that there was a lot involved in that. Like, obviously, how long did you stay on the road? At what
Mm-hmm.
point? I'm assuming that they give you the option of coming to a desk.
Yeah.
What all did that look like for you?
Yeah. So, it, I don't know how it's worked for other women necessarily, or how long they've stayed on. I didn't stay on the road very long, because I literally, like with all that gear and stuff, and
Hmm.
especially like where it sits, I was nauseous,
Hmm.
all the time. And then especially working at night, like I just feel like it's, even worse at night. And so I went on light duty pretty early on. And then, like I said, I had got to interview for that investigative spot. I was probably, oh, I'm guessing timeline, but I was probably like 5 months pregnant when I interviewed and got that spot. So then that was obviously um, light duty, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You were doing more from an office-ish environment, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
did you still have to wear the uniform when you were pregnant? Like, do they have like maternity versions of that thing?
So so funny. I'm like, I don't think I want to stay on long enough to find out. But literally in policy, it states that they have to provide a maternity uniform. Like they don't, they can't say you have to go work light duty just because you're pregnant. Like that's your
Sure,
choice.
sure.
And so I just laughed, like just imagining what that would look like. Yeah.
Like a holster, maybe like a holster instead, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's adorable. But when you were on light duty, you didn't have to wear the uniform, right?
No, no.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I think that would be a pretty badass picture of somebody in a state trooper pregnant outfit.
Oh gosh.
Um, so you decided to make the decision to go ahead and stay home. Obviously, like you still have this passion for women and the things that you've
Hmm.
seen and the things that you've experienced within the investigation role. But I'm sure even before that. So how did your experience in law enforcement, um, shape what you are now creating in regards to like, this empowering women through like self-defense and the self-defense education?
Hmm. Um, so, I think I pulled from a lot of different aspects, but some of the stuff that I learned in the patrol and being on the road as a woman, I mean, you don't have a partner in the car with you. And depending on where you decide to go, there may not be another officer close by. So some of the things that I learned in the academy is just like your presence. So then with the state patrol, your officer presence, like as a smaller female, like that needs to be my first defense, like my presence and how I conduct myself and my tone of voice and how I speak to people. Because I don't ever, I don't want it to escalate to a situation where I have to go hands on. That's my last choice. Um, so learning that, and obviously getting to practice that and
Mm-hmm.
implement that. Um, I just want women to be able to feel a sense of that as well, like using their own voice to stand up for
Mm-hmm.
themselves, especially when it comes to their safety. And then, the domestic violence representative, just the training that we received through that and the statistics and stuff like that. Just if I could help women, to feel empowered to stand up for themselves in just everyday situations or in relationships. Um, that's kind of where my passion has grown from.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about like what you're doing now and like what this looks like. I mean, I have a gamut of questions, obviously like I think women in general, like there are things that we are very aware of and like, like the hair on the back of our necks, like all of a sudden stand up for a reason or, running in the dark or,
Hmm.
like all of those like little things that like we do think about. But then I think there's a lot of things that we probably don't think about
Yeah.
very frequently and consistently. So I'd love to just like chat around that a little bit with you in regards to like, you mentioned the presence, obviously, like, being assertive and being very, I mean, I feel like any law enforcement officer you meet, you're gonna like, what you're talking about, right? Like you can like
Hmm.
feel that.
Yeah.
But how does that show up for like a woman on the day to day? Just, certain environments.
Yeah. So, back to how I kind of got started with where I'm at right now. After leaving the patrol, it was so weird. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but within like a week's time span, I had like five other women ask me, like, have you ever thought about teaching a self-defense class?
Hmm.
And of course, my initial response was like, no, like there's somebody else out there, like already doing that, probably more equipped to do that than I am. But then by like the fifth person asking me that, I'm like, okay, let me think about this. Let me consider it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then of course, just awesome women in my life and my husband and them encouraging me to just go for it. So I've started Guardian Self-Defense.
Hmm.
Um, and so focusing my passion on women and then teen girls. But I've also taught a class with men and women. Um, and so I I speak first for about half the class, and then I teach hands-on stuff. But so teaching the initial like self-awareness, situational awareness. Again, like I said, presenting yourself, and yeah, I totally forgot what your question was.
No, no, keep going. You were good. And it's good. In specifics to like that situational awareness, like let's just talk about some of those scenarios too. Like what does that look like for us? Like things that, what are things that I think about? Like I said, like I think about um running,
Yeah,
it being dark and like what are some things that women should be considering before heading out for a run in the dark? Or
yeah.
should they?
So so there's a line of like you don't you don't want to live in fear, which is not what I teach. So you don't want to go down the path of like, this causing you anxiety and stuff. But in our world, like it's just being aware and being prepared. Okay, so like if this were to happen, what would I do? And so obviously, I feel like my mind is a little more wired like that than probably the typical person. But I think it's important to uh, as women to start maybe wiring your brain like that a little bit more because again that's being prepared. But for example, like working out at the gym, open gym time when you're there by
Hmm.
yourself, like whether it's super early in the morning or at night, like um, being aware of your surroundings when you leave, like
Hmm.
maybe just taking a peek outside before you actually leave the building, making sure there's nobody else around. um, or if there's a car parked next to your car, was it there when you pulled up? Is there anybody in the car? So there's lots of
Hmm.
it's just being aware of what's going on. I think it's so hard because we have these little things that we carry around with us that we're looking at constantly, um,
Sure.
that we're not seeing the whole picture. And it's important to know, like, to be thinking, you know, does that person fit the situation? Like walking into the grocery store, why is that person sitting right there? They kind of look out of place. And it's not like, oh, call 911 right now. That's just a red flag to just be
Hmm.
aware of. Okay. And then, um, I don't know, like I think you could go down the rabbit hole of like restaurants, like when you're sitting in a restaurant, um, like if something were to happen in the restaurant, what would I do? Like thinking through scenarios, um, where are my exits at, things like that.
Right.
But like you had mentioned, like going on a run, especially with Lincoln's incidents that have happened in the last couple months, and it happens. It's happened before in years past, but I just taught a class for a running group, and so we talked about some of that stuff, and some of it's stuff that they've heard or we've heard often, like one earbud in when
Hmm.
if you're wanting to listen to music or a podcast or something while you're running or walking, so you can hear if people are coming up behind you. Um, Running when it's light out or running with groups. But I think it's super important to have some sort of self-defense alarm or self-defense tool. So
Hmm.
one of the ones that I love right now is the birdie alarm.
Hmm.
And they've also come out with a newer version that has a couple other features to it. But then there's, you can carry pepper spray or pepper gel or things
Right.
like that. And I think it's just, even when I go walking during the day or, running during the day, um, as women, I don't know, I feel like we're still, it's just something that's always on our mind,
Hmm.
about are we safe? Is somebody, going to come up and attack me? So just constantly, just being aware of your situation, scanning your surroundings, looking behind you. And again, it doesn't have to be a fear, anxiety thing, but it's just you're constantly aware, making yourself aware of who's around you, your surroundings, and your situation.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
To that point, my dad went through the police academy very briefly before he like changed career paths or whatever. But ever since then, I just remember like anytime we go anywhere, like he always makes sure he's sitting like where, like if we're in a booth,
Hmm.
he's always facing like the entrance,
Hmm.
right? Like he always like
Yeah.
positions himself in that way. And it's something like I've just always seen him do and I've always like been aware of it.
Yeah.
I can't say that I do it now. I probably just rely on whoever I'm with to maybe be more
Yeah.
aware of that. But
And it's so
yeah.
interesting because, um, I think if anybody else is listening, because that's what I was referring to, like in a restaurant,
Hmm.
they'd be like, huh, well, why? But like, I still do that. That's exactly,
Hmm.
the reason, so that you can see what's going on. You can see who's coming and going, and
Yeah.
um, observing body language too of people. And, you
Hmm.
know, yeah.
Well, and I think it would be cool to speak to a little bit like women's intuition, right? Like
Hmm.
there has to be a component in self-defense. We talked about in a previous episode, we talked about like medical gaslighting, right? Like going to the doctor and being told like, okay, like, this is in your head, or, you're just tired because you're a mom, like welcome to life, like those types of things
Hmm.
where there's actually something else like deeply going on. And so we've learned to like minimize some of those like deep seated
Absolutely.
intuition feelings, on a medical level, but it's in this scenario too. I feel like, we are, we get that feeling, we get that like icky, like I said, like
Hmm.
hair on the back of your head, kind of like neck stands up, or it's just like oh, that something does not feel right. And I don't know why.
Yes.
Oh, I'm being ridiculous, right? Like it's
Yes.
instantly like, I'm going to minimize that reaction I'm having
And
right now.
that's literally one of the points that I talk about in my classes is we have been conditioned to ignore our gut instincts. And they are
Mm-hmm.
there for a reason, and they are literally like our initial survival tools. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we ignore those because we don't want to seem paranoid or, overreactive, or we don't want to seem rude. Um, that's another big thing that I talk about is, I think over the years it's been ingrained in us to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
about your safety, like, you need to not worry about what other people are going to think if you're going to offend somebody or be rude to somebody, and not worry about being kind in those situations. You have
Mm-hmm.
the right to protect your space and yourself. And you know what? If it ends up being nothing, then, big deal. Apologize, or,
Mm-hmm.
forget it ever happened. But, especially for, young girls and teens, that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm really going to focus on is, you know, you have a voice, and you have the right to protect yourself, and not even if it's, especially if it's to an adult, like, you have the right to say no. You have, like, don't worry about being rude, um
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to that authority. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's true. It's a very like I don't know how many times I've been in situations where like something feels weird. I don't know why it
Hmm.
feels weird, but I just think I need to like move myself from this situation as quickly as
Hmm.
possible. And fortunately, nothing hugely traumatic has happened to me in that
Yeah.
regard, as far as like anything physical or whatever else, but you know, there you still hear that voice in your head of like, oh, like you're being dramatic, or like that you're just being paranoid, like,
Hmm.
versus like trusting that intuition, and
Hmm.
that body's like visceral response to
Yes.
something going on.
Yeah.
Um, with that being said, on the other side of that, when you are in a high stress environment, and let's say it is something very serious and we've got an issue going on, how do, what is your, first recommendation on like how to overcome that fear or panic? Like, right, like you went through 6 months of like essentially being in a constantly stressed out state for a reason. They're training you
Hmm.
to like be used to these like high intensity situations and learn how to think properly,
Yeah.
learn how to
Yeah.
think effectively, right? That's why they're doing it. It's not just to like torture
Yeah.
you necessarily. Um, at least I assume that's why they're doing it. That's my guess anyway.
Hmm.
Um, so for people like, me or, anybody else that haven't been in that like well, I mean, I feel like everybody's carrying around a certain level of stress right now,
Yeah.
but not to that extent, right? Like it's that fight or flight or it's that freeze. Like I think that there is that freeze response too, right? Like it's another stress
Hmm.
response. So like how are you empowering women to like obviously like physically react, which is like last case scenario, but how do we like, get out of that like panicked freeze or fear panic state?
Hmm. And I think that's a lot of what I talk about in the beginning of my class, is just being prepared, um, in other ways mentally, um, so that if you do come across that situation, that's your first line of defense, and that it doesn't ever have to end up escalating. So touching on, like I've said, presence, trusting that gut instinct, not worrying about offending somebody. So in those situations, like being loud and distance are your
Hmm.
best options there. So trying to draw attention to the situation, and not being an easy target, because you know an attacker's not out there looking for a fight. They're looking for an opportunity, to take advantage
Sure.
of somebody. And so presenting yourself, equipping yourself with things that make you not an easy target. And then if you do encounter a situation like that, distance and being loud are going to help you.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. Um, in these classes, like what role are you seeing community and group support and like all of that like showing up in like the effectiveness of these training environments in these classes for these women?
Can you rephrase that or put it
Yeah,
differently?
yeah. So like when you're when you have a group of women together, like what are you seeing in regards to like them coming together and like learning together in this way and like feeling I'm assuming that they're getting some sense of empowerment not only from you and the knowledge that you're giving them, but also like from each other, like being in this space together in that community
Mm-hmm.
aspect.
Yeah. So, specifically speaking about my women's class that I taught, it was pretty awesome. I assumed people would sign up with like a friend. They
Hmm.
all just signed up individually, didn't know each other. Um, and so I think it was so great to have a group of women with the same concerns, um, and wanting to improve or equip themselves better for situations like that, come together and be able to just be like, okay, like, yes, this is a concern that I have. And she also has that same concern. So I'm not crazy, obviously. And,
Hmm.
being able to talk about situations that they've been in, or, like, what do you think about this situation? What should I have done here? So it was great to see those women come together and be able to feel comfortable talking about that. And then when we paired up and did hands-on stuff, like people made, like you're getting in there close and tussling with somebody, like you're gonna make a new friend. So it
Yeah.
was awesome for these women to, make a new friend and learn some stuff. And then even after the group, there was like some follow-up questions or whatever, then I was able to reach out to them and send them some more information and helpful stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, I think again, to play on like doing hard things together, like we've talked about, like within the Victress community and working out and like the strength and empowerment that that happens. But also, like, this is another hard thing. This is another opportunity for
Hmm.
women to find empowerment in a different way. And when you're doing it alongside other women, it just tends to feel that much more beneficial and that much more rewarding, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were going to pick three things, like top defensive skills every woman should know, and I'm not like, we're obviously on video, so I could like watch you do the move, but like if there were three defensive like movements, I know we've talked about like the intangible things or in regards to like obviously not wanting to get to a physical space, but
Hmm.
if you had three physical techniques, what would those be for that you
Oh
wish every woman
gosh.
knew how to do?
Oh gosh. Um, so I don't know if I could speak specifically to just like three moves. The important part of like what I teach is not you're I'm not teaching you how to overpower or subdue somebody. I'm teaching
Sure.
you how to disengage and get to safety.
Yes.
So, getting yourself out of a situation like that as opposed to fighting. Like, I'm not teaching you how to fight and take down somebody. Um, right? Like you can learn that somewhere else. But
No, no,
um,
it makes sense. But like a defensive technique, right? Like versus
yeah,
like uh, I don't want to say an assault because that wouldn't be an assault, but you know what I mean.
yeah. So like my simple initial ones that I teach are like wrist grabs. If somebody were to grab you by your wrist, how to get out of those a couple different ways. And then some like if somebody were to grab you from behind, wrap their arms around you, teaching like that. And it's these moves aren't, you know, the end all be all. Like this isn't the one solution that you need to know. It's using everything that you have. I mean, because we have different like your elbow, using your elbow as defense and your knee. And so I talk about different like strikes that you can use in addition to these because even somebody who practices these over and over and over again and is super proficient at them, like you're never going to have the perfect situation where somebody comes up and grabs you just right, like you trained and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. So knowing these, in addition to knowing like you have different, you know, things that you can use to help defend yourself. You don't have to necessarily have, you know, like a tool or things like that.
No, but those are good. Like
So
somebody grab your wrist, somebody grab you from behind, like
yeah.
um I don't know, somebody, I'm sure there's lots of things that people would come up with. And even like the younger girls, I'm sure it's like the situational awareness is so much more verbal, right? Like also
Hmm.
like um don't fall for those types of scenarios or those types of comments or like that type of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um within the class, how long are your classes normally?
So it varies on size. For like I just taught the one that I taught for runners. It was like a very condensed class and they only got, you know, like a snippet of my full class. So that was like an hour. But normally my um, normal classes are about an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And you're, so again, you're doing that classroom setting and then that more like breakout, like actually
hands on. Yeah.
physical hands-on stuff.
Yeah, and I like to limit the size of the class so that I'm demonstrating and showing you the move and the technique, but then I'm able to you're paired up and I'm able to go around and actually help you throughout the move and make sure that you're doing it right and learning it right. So,
That sounds very familiar. Sounds
yeah.
like something I know, something I know about. Um, I know you've got another one coming up at Victor's, I believe, right? But this
Mhm.
one's going to be specific for women runners, from my understanding. Women and running.
So I have the next one I have coming up is the mother-daughter one.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
you have another daughter first. I
Yep.
apologize. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's on the 18th of October.
What about mother
Um,
son? Can you do something like that too?
yeah. I should. Maybe I'll have to do that. Would that be more for you to,
That would be probably be more
dominate?
for, yeah, yeah, like how do I get out of them? Like they,
Yeah.
no, I am not physically abused by my sons. Like that is not, let me make that clear. But no, I just think
Um,
even boys, like I think raising boys, like they're, we focus in on women, like, and obviously like that is what I do is what you do, but like
mhm,
I just teaching my sons like in those such in certain situations like how to defend themselves too because we know like
mhm.
this stuff isn't talked about with men and it doesn't happen as frequently as it does to men but
Yeah,
there's still a certain level of like boys needing to be able to like also protect themselves and be
yeah.
spatially aware because believe me my teenagers are not spatially aware in any capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not the case.
Yeah. So maybe that'll be down the pipeline. I hope and I envision like this being something more and growing something bigger than just self-defense classes. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I definitely feel it. But yeah, I'm super excited about the mother-daughter class
Yeah,
and just seeing how that goes. And
because that
I
is
just
when.
so it's October 18th. I've got two different class times at 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. and there's a few spots left in both. But the girls have to
Is it
be
age specific?
um, not based off of the class times, no.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
the girls just have to be 12 or older.
Okay.
But if you have a daughter that's not quite 12, but you feel like maturity wise, she would be fine, then you can just reach out to me. But yeah, I'm super excited because I think that also is going to open the door for, moms and daughters to have some good conversations afterwards
Yeah.
too. So,
Yes. Yeah,
mm,
absolutely. So that is October 18th at 6 p.m. and then 7:30 p.m. and they
yes.
can reach out to you directly. And then I don't remember when the next one is, to be honest with you. I know we're doing another one, right? We are doing that, right? Like I'm not making that up.
I have not heard anything,
Oh, well,
but
you're on our agenda.
okay.
Um, specific to women, women runners, I think
Okay.
specific. Like we have a lot of running, I think in the city of
Hmm.
Lincoln, we have a lot of runners, and I think, just the other day, like I got voluntold slash volunteered for the Good Life or not Good Life Half Eight. That is not something I did for the Market to Market.
Market to market.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm super excited about it. But so I started running again, and the only time that I had during the day the other day was like super early in the morning, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to be on a treadmill, so I like got on the trail, and I'm like, okay, like I'm a
Hmm.
little like, and I don't know why. Like there wasn't nothing happened. Like I felt okay. It was just naturally, like I turned down my music. I like
Yeah.
made sure I had my flashlight on my phone, and then um, I was fortunate enough. I came home and Chase said something to the effect of like, "Here's some pepper spray I just bought you at the
Yeah.
store." Because
Yeah.
I mean, next time, here you go. Because I did like it just kind of just I ran faster. That's for
Yeah.
sure. I will say I did run faster than I normally would, but I think just giving if I had some tools in my tool belt just to reach to if I needed them, I think
Hmm.
I would feel better.
Yeah.
Just overall feel better. I don't want to say that it's wrong, and I think that went around there for women for a while after that one lady was unfortunately murdered out while she was running. Women shouldn't have to be scared to go out there and run in the dark.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, we shouldn't have to like limit the things that we do in life. I would
Yeah.
hope anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, stay tuned because if Jenna doesn't have it on her books, I have it on my books that it's gonna
Okay.
happen.
Sounds
Where
good.
can people find you? I know you are also pumping out like a decent amount of cool stuff on Instagram right now, just like in regards to knowledge or your perspective on different things, or different scenarios and all of that stuff. So where can people
Yeah.
find you on that platform?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's Jenna, Jenna _J Riddle, Riddle. Yeah. So I try to post, I'm not very good. I try to post just sharing safety tips and knowledge. I'm also super passionate about kids just being safe online. So I also talk about that and share some stuff on that. But that's probably the best place to reach out to me. Like if you're interested in taking a self-defense class, or I actually had a friend, classmate from Victress reach out and was just like, hey, can you just give me, here's my like home setup situation. Can you just give me a couple tips of like what else I should do? And so I
Mm.
was able to just we just texted back and forth, and I was able to give her a couple other additional like safety things she should do. And she really appreciated that. So yeah, I'm open to anything and everything. And
What about like team bondings or like small group, like, I don't know, and maybe somebody out there is in a stage of life of like planning a bachelorette party or whatever it may be. Like,
hmm
is that an option as well where people could like reach out for like their own, I don't want to say private, but private
yes,
opportunity?
yep. I had, um, like I just had a like chiropractic office reach out to me and saying, like if we wanted to host one for our employees, what would that look like? Or if we wanted to offer it to some of our clients, what would that look like? So, yeah, if you have the space, it obviously makes it super easy for me to come in and teach a class. But yes, besides
Awesome.
the ones that I hold myself, then yeah, I'm willing to come to you and teach a class also. So
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Is there any other organizations that you're trying to get in with right now? Like, is there in regards to like public service or, anything like that? Any, the younger girls organizations or anything?
No, but that has been on the back of my mind of different, different where this need might be. I reached out to UNL's, um, gosh, what's their, I can't remember the whole long name, but like their victim
Hmm.
advocacy group there or whatever. Um, and then, like I've had, I think last month was Realtors Month or something like
Oh,
that. And so
yeah.
like that's another good group of like, I mean, you're showing houses by yourself, and a lot of them
Yeah.
are female. So
Yeah.
I've had somebody else reach out to me that, is a realtor as well, interested in a class. So yeah.
That's a very good one. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for your time
Yeah.
today.
Thanks
I
for having
learned
me.
I learned a lot already. And I'm excited to hopefully I'm not invited to the mom and daughter one because I'm not in that club, but I will come to the next one that I get a chance to attend.
Yeah.
And again, that is Jenna underscore Riddle, Riddle, correct?
Jenna_J.
J. Don't do an R. Jenna underscore J underscore
Underscore
Riddle.
Riddle. Yep.
Okay. On Instagram, and they can reach out to you to get signed up, hopefully for whether that's the mother daughter or the next one coming down. Do you have any other ones besides that one officially scheduled? And the
No,
one that's
but
in my head.
my next one would probably be a women's one, because I had quite a
Okay,
few that couldn't make the first one that are interested in a women's one. So I'm not quite sure if that would maybe be, I don't know, December's kind of too crazy. So we'll see.
sure.
But
Absolutely. Okay. Well, October 18th, 6 p.m., 7:30, if you're obviously in Lincoln. For those of you that are listening that are not local, like Jenna said, I'm sure there's lots of other opportunities for you to learn from her as well. So definitely hit her up through Instagram. But thank you again for
yeah,
everything that you're doing, not only professionally but personally. And you're an inspiration, truly, like, and such an
yeah.
empowering um, representation of women's strength. And it's just awesome to know you. So thank you.
Thanks, Stacey.
All right. Thank you.